But during the pandemic, I felt like people were going to be more stuck at home, and in return, they would want to revive those spaces. So I held free workshops where you just, hey, bring a mask, bring pictures of the space you want to revive. Let's talk about the design. Let's talk about how you could do it yourself so that you could kind of be able to make it through the pandemic in a space that you're enjoying. So I also have moments or opportunities like that where I make sure that's a priority for me too, in terms of who I'm giving my services to.
Well, I love the San Gabriel Valley.
Welcome to the My SGV podcast.
So I grew up here and I still live in Alhambra.
I was raised in between Temple City and Alhambra.
Eventually resided in South San Gabriel.
Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley.
Monterey Park has pretty much been my whole life.
Well, I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley.
We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you are from, in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome. All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, we bring you the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We do appreciate it. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that I'm back in Scott's chair because we have kicked him off the show and he's no longer, no, I'm just kidding. He had to go to another meeting, but Victoria and I are going to hold down the show again today, as we always do in these times, so we'll be just fine. So, Victoria, I love your house. I love your house. It's so awesome. Like, just looking at it from the street, and what I love about it, like, there's this big porch, welcoming porch, right? There's a front lawn. There are like grand trees there, and then there's a backyard. There's this, I don't know what it's called, but it goes around like the top edge. Around, I think in the living room.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what they're called either. It's just kind of like a part of the wall is like protruding out a little bit. Yeah. It's just like an extra frame piece on the ceiling. And
it looks like, I don't know if it's like, it looks like Tiffany style like lighting or chandelier. I don't know if it is, but and then there's these huge windows. And it's a craftsman home, right?
Yeah, I think so. Mom says like arts and crafts style kind of thing. I don't know if that's the same as craftsman. Mom's more passionate about the style of the houses than I am, so she knows more.
And what's really unique also is that it has an attic, right? Like a large walk-in attic where you're not crouching down. It doesn't feel small, but all the bedrooms are downstairs, which is also very unique too, right? I really love your home, and then my wife really loves craftsman homes. And I never really knew what that was actually until she, turned me on to that. And she loves a lot of aspects of it, but one of them is like the built-in furniture, like the furniture is sort of built into the home. And she loves this like, I don't think your home has it, but there's like paneling that goes up maybe 2/3 or maybe like half the way up. And it's like wood paneling. Have you seen that on older homes?
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
Those are really nice.
I don't know what that's called, but I'm not so much into that stuff as much as like I just when I see it, it really looks cool and I appreciate it. Right. Yeah. So, well, if you haven't already figured out, today's guest will have something to do with what we're talking about. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to Paris Baguette for providing the delicious pastries and treats for our guests every week. Please go check them out in the city of San Gabriel on Las Tunas and say hi to Jason for us. All right, let's get to today's guest. Today's guest has been shaping the future of architecture while staying true to his roots in the San Gabriel Valley. A licensed architect and educator, he's not just designing residential spaces, he's helping to build minds. Whether he's co-chairing the AIA's Higher Education Committee, teaching at Pasadena City College and Woodbury University, or working on his latest architectural project, his passion for creating meaningful dialogue between spaces and the people who inhabit them shines through in everything he does. He's even ventured into unique architectural gems like his Whiskey Point cabin, which is now one of the top-rated rentals on Airbnb. Born and raised in my hometown, Monterey Park, he's always been about giving back to the community that shaped him. From free workshops to hands-on architectural projects, his goal is to make architecture accessible and impactful for everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome Justin Sasada. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me so much.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
Sasada, but
Sasada.
I get Sasada a lot too. So
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Sasada.
Sasada.
Yeah. So you are an architect, but you're much more than just an architect, but architecture is your passion?
Right. Huge passion for architecture, designing in general, but also kind of passing along that information to future designers.
Why is that important to you?
I feel very grateful and kind of lucky that I had the right people bring me into the world of design and architecture. So I just want to make sure I provide that same opportunity to, whoever potentially the next Justin is. So I just want to be that person.
I see. Okay, well, we want to get to know who Justin is, but let's start with what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
So I was born and raised in Monterey Park. Lived right behind Atlantic Square. Went to Shirt High School. After high school, went to ELAC. After ELAC, went to USC. But right after graduating from USC, came right back to the community. I taught at Pasadena City College. I lived and worked in Pasadena and San Gabriel. So I've just always had some type of tie and connection to the area. And I do have a lot of love for the area.
Yeah, I mean, born and raised here, right?
Yeah.
I forgot that Monterey Park kids can go to Sure. I forgot about that.
yeah, I was part of that population.
I was like, oh yeah. So what was it like growing up in Monterey Park?
Obviously, it's a Asian-dominated area. I'm half white, half Filipino. So I definitely felt like I belonged, but then also felt like I wasn't Asian enough. But the community was always so welcoming. Like I was part of Tigers and Monterey Park Sports Club. So there's just so much, at least back then, that knitted the community. And so I enjoyed Monterey Park, and I like the area of Monterey Park.
And when you say Tigers, you're referring to like the Japanese like basketball league?
Yeah, CYC.
Okay.
Right.
You were a Tiger.
I was a Tiger.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, like the Japanese basketball community is quite large, right?
Right.
But you must have been in at a very early age because you're not Japanese.
Right. But they consider other Asian, like Chinese and Filipino, to be part of that too. So that's how I got my shoe.
I think you can have like 2 or 3 on a team, right?
Right.
And you're, how tall are you?
6'3". So, but I didn't grow I didn't grow until later, so that wasn't my advantage.
Okay.
Early on.
Like, hey, look at that guy.
Look at that tall white kid.
Okay, and then you went to Sure High School.
Went to Sure High School, yeah.
And what sort of things there, influenced where you ended up going with architecture?
Funny story. So my assistant basketball coach in high school happened to be a well-known licensed architect in the area, and he would have barbecues at his house every summer, and he designed his house. So I remember walking in going, holy crap, this is, and at that time I was very unsure of what type of design I wanted to go into, and this is still high school days. So I remember walking in going like, this is what I want to do. And he also happened to be the chair of the architecture department at ELAC, the school down the street from me. So it was very easy for me to, after high school, to say, yeah, let me try it out quick. So, I mean, that tie alone, that connection alone kind of set me on my path.
Can you describe the elements of the house that you were taken by?
Yeah, so he kind of lives in the hilly area by Potrero Grande.
Okay.
And so there's actually 3 houses he designed. He sold 2 of them, kept 1 for himself. But there's just a good mixture of materials. You know, he has a lot of CMU block that has not so much of a flat surface, but kind of a rocky finish. But he kind of coincides that and complements it with some metal, some typical stucco. But it's just a nice crafted area, and then you actually enter from the top level and you park and you walk down a spiral stair, and it's a nice carved out exterior space. And it was just a really great space to have an outdoor barbecue. He has these huge sliders that lead to his kitchen and dining area. And it's somewhat of a tight spot, but you can't tell because it was well designed to kind of make it feel nice and open. And then since you're on the hill area, you just have a great view. So I remember him telling me a story that a lot of people thought it was a bad idea to design something up there, and what he got out of it, they couldn't envision it. So I mean that's kind of the role of the architect, is to envision something that others can't typically see. So that I love that about the house.
Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
When you went there, were you asking him questions about it, or were you just like sort of figuring this stuff out on your own? How did he bring you into that world?
I remember asking him like, "Wait, you designed this?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I might want to do that too." He's like, "All right, come to ELAC. Well, where do you want to go, like college-wise?" And I remember initially thinking, well, I can't get into USC, because a lot of people told me early on that there's no way you could get into SC. Like, you're not smart enough for that. So I was like, oh, maybe Cal Poly Pomona. And so after the years at ELAC and getting to SC, he's like, I knew you could get into SC, man. So it was just that kind of initial, like, try it out. And I only took 2 classes my first semester, two architecture classes. And I remember going like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So
talk about that route, because I don't know why everybody doesn't go the junior college transfer route, right? Like, it just doesn't. Why would you do it any other way, in my opinion, right? So talk about that for kids who may have thought like you that they couldn't ever get to SC. Like, what was that like for you?
Right, I feel like that's such a productive route if you stay focused, because now you have the power to try out different avenues, because a lot of people aren't sure what they want to major in. I feel like I got lucky that the first thing I majored in was something I love. But now you're spending a fraction of the dollar. You have a little bit less pressure and a lot more time to focus on what could potentially be your major. And you still have a great set of resources in terms of teaching. Community colleges have great teachers. And that's why even after I was done with my degree, I wanted to teach at specifically a community college and really pull people in and show them like, hey, this is very possible. Tell me what you need from me so that you guys can get to the next level. Because I think I went to SC, so that saved me $60,000. Like, it shaved off a couple of years, because architecture is a 5-year degree. So it shaved off a year for me. The fact that it was down the street too, I was just basically skating to class. That was also the time I realized I couldn't play basketball. The same way I competed and devoted my time and effort to basketball, that's when I shifted and said, now it needs to be about architecture. So I felt like everything about that environment gave me that chance to do that.
Oh, so it sounds like you were quite the basketball player then too before.
I was all right. Yeah, I'm washed up now, but I was all right.
Did you go play in like the Dodgers tournament in Vegas?
Oh yeah.
And the Las Vegas Invitational?
Yeah, those are always good times.
Yeah. Did you stay at like the Cal or like
my
Main Street?
My mom's a gambler, so we always stayed at the hotels that she wants to stay at. So usually it was Mandalay Bay.
Oh, okay. But like all the whole tournament was like at those downtown,
like Main Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always had to like find a way down, or my dad would like happily drop me off, and because it used to be at GameWorks. Everyone used to go Saturday night, go to GameWorks.
Okay. And did you win in those tournaments? Were you on a winning team?
Typically, yeah.
And what division did you play?
Gold.
Oh, you played gold.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you were good then.
We had a lot of good role players on our team, and played high school. Well, that's why like even after high school, I was like, do I play college basketball and I think it was expected of me to play college basketball, but I was very fearful that basketball was going to be my only part of my identity. And that's when that was around the same time I was going to ELAC, because I played at ELAC for maybe 2 weeks before I called it quits.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this is not what I want to do. This is not the only thing I want to do. So really shifting that framework over to architecture, because School of Architecture is a very competitive zone, and at studios at SC, there's 12 students per studio, and it wasn't a written rule, but usually there's only one A given out and maybe like one or two A minuses. So you're kind of competing for those top spots. So every project that you have, you got to kind of come with it if you want those type of grades. And that was important to me. So, and that also allowed me to go like, oh yeah, I'm going to compete today. So I love that competitive aspect to it in the School of Architecture.
Wow. I'm curious. So what, you just weren't feeling it in those 2 weeks of playing basketball at ELAC?
I remember the coach, because this is before the Netflix documentaries. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, of what?
There's a documentary that the first season focused on a junior college in Texas for football, but season 2 and 3, I believe, were on ELAC basketball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen that.
But this is with their new coaching staff. So before that coaching staff was the coach I had, and I remember the first 2 weeks, I consider myself to be a pretty high IQ basketball player, and I didn't agree with a lot of his IQ.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that might not make it fun for me either. So all these little things just made an easier decision to shift over to architecture. And good thing I did that, because a year and a half after that, I ended up tearing my ACL.
Oh man, how?
Basketball.
Like pickup?
It was like an adult league, but someone went up and it wasn't even that hard, but they kind of went into my knee and pushed it backwards.
Oh.
But I just felt the smallest click, and I was like, I've never felt that in my life. So I knew something happened, but it landed where my first week at USC, I was in crutches after ACL surgery.
Oh, you had it repaired?
I had it repaired. I had my physical therapy right off campus. My physical therapist ended up being another Tiger player who was a little older than me. But like the whole community thing came back again. Like I'm always intertwined or crossing paths with people from our community.
So there must be some college-aged listeners out there or people watching who are in that zone now where they're like, oh, I'm not sure what I want to do, and it's taking classes. But you described going to 2 classes and you're like, yeah, I know this is what I want to do. Can you describe, what you were feeling in those moments? Like what let you know that this is what you wanted to do?
So in high school, I actually had a clothing line. I've always enjoyed designing. The question was what type of design I wanted to end up doing. And during those first few classes, I saw that it felt to me the most complicated type of design. I felt with graphic design, it was 2D. There are a lot of layers to it. There's still a lot of elements. It's still a complicated aspect. But when you break down 3-dimensional space, when you break down how that begins to impact the user, or potentially how the user can impact the architecture, I just felt like that was so fascinating. And I could think about those ideas every day for a job, and I'd be happy with that. After those first 2 classes, I started to kind of steamroll, and I remember that by the end of my second semester, I was just in full speed, and I knew exactly where I was going to go with that, and I knew I wanted to transfer to USC and continue with architecture after graduating too.
See, okay. So, as someone who doesn't know anything about architecture, what is the education on architecture like? Like you described in the story earlier on, your appreciation and noticing of materials used. And so are you learning about materials, light, space? Like what is the architect's education like?
So as an architect, you're actually required to have a very good basic understanding of everything. Okay. So of all the disciplines. So we have to have a very good understanding of electrical, mechanical, plumbing,
plumbing too.
Plumbing, structural, okay. Physics. We're also, partially historians because we tie into historical context sometimes. I also say that we're fortune tellers because you have to kind of predict how your project will impact and how users will use your space. So all those elements plus like the actual education, you usually have one design studio every semester. In that design studio, you're always given a kind of a made up premises, and you're designing and developing with your instructor, who's kind of giving you do's and don'ts of what's happening in your thought process and in your design process. So aside from the design studios, you're still taking all these other classes to understand all the different avenues and parts of a building. To me, it kind of feels like body anatomy, and you have to kind of know what parts of the building function, what do they provide, what's the difficult part of it. Like for example, California is very hard to design for, because not only are you designing for earthquakes, but you're also designing for fires. And earthquakes, you want flexible structures, where fires, you want a lot of layers, which causes rigidity. So like, how do you design to balance those two things? So giving these kind of made up premises kind of gives you baptism by fire and forces you to think about the design or the architecture in a way that most people won't see it anyways.
I see. From a layman's perspective, when I think of architecture, or I look at architecture for that purpose, I think only of like the aesthetics of it, right? But it sounds like there's so much of the functionality that you have to learn. And how much of it is the aesthetics, like, how people look at the space, use it, and how much of it is functionality?
I think it's dependent on the area too, but it really depends on who's using it. So for example, for my house, I remember the first year I moved into this 1950s ranch style house in La Habra. The first year was geared towards remodeling things that no one can see. It's like, I need to make this place functional before I make it beautiful. And in the architecture school, there's a saying, form follows function. So when you're designing a space, you really have to let the function begin to dictate how this thing begins to be laid out and shaped. Because if you're just merely thinking about the shape, then it does no good for the users. So it is a hefty requirement to balance the two of form and function.
I see.
Yeah. I
was in the military for a number of years as a mechanic, and working on vehicles. You're like, who the hell designed this? And I'm like, this is like the worst spot to put this, and I'm just thinking like, why didn't they just consult or even think about how are you going to access this point, right? And then I saw a reel or something, and this, I'll say he's like someone who works on homes. He was videotaping this, I think it was a crawl space. And it was like just this amazing crawl space, like really had thought in mind, like how the upkeep was going to be, how the person working in there was going to have to access this stuff. And it was like the best he had ever seen, whereas crawl spaces are often like, spider webs and dirty and,
right.
So I was like, wow. So is that what you're talking about? Like the user in mind, like who's actually going to use the space and what it's for?
Right. I mean, that's why I'm a fan of built-in furniture. Like the built-in furniture is like, now you're trying to make a cohesive design between interior and exterior, but also begin to predict how the user is going to be using the space, or, actually dictate how the user is going to use the space. And yeah, like that's just, anytime I see specific details, I always try to reverse engineer, like, wait, why was that decision made? Right? And I remember I have this random kind of closet in my hallway, and my wife's like, is this to hang clothes? Because there's kind of bars that go up. I was like, no, it's a ladder to go up. She's like, that's built in? It's like, yeah. So like, now you don't have to put a hideous ladder right here every time you go up, or whatever the case is. But I always look for, like, the devil's in the details. I always look for those things, and then kind of reverse to see how did they get that point? What made them make that decision? Because even with being a mechanic, it may seem odd, but I bet there's some logic to it. Sometimes it might be a bad design too, but for the most part, there might be some logic that eventually got them there. And sometimes when I go to clients' their house and see something that they're like, oh yeah, we just did that just cause. Like, oh man, there's just no logic behind that. You gotta you know. So it's always interesting to see those situations.
So speaking of bad design, okay. So I had a.
I love talking about bad design.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I had a Scion FRS.
Uh-huh.
You know what that is?
Yep.
Okay, so it's a collab between Toyota and Subaru.
Yep. I have a Subaru Ascent and a Subaru Solterra.
Okay. So they had the Boxster engine in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think in Japan it's called the Toyota 86. It's the remake of the 86 hatchback, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had the 86 hatchback. So, this was like a fun car. Like before I was married and have kids, now I have a SUV. So that engine sits low, right? And in the engine bay, there's almost no room to get your hands into the side because it's flatter and wider versus like an inline four.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it sits low to the ground, like less vibration. And then, the Boxster engine, the pistons go this way, right? Versus like a four, right? But the cylinder heads and the valve cover are all at the very end also. And it sits right on top of the exhaust manifold. And so I had a leak on my valve cover and it was dripping onto the exhaust manifold. So it was smoking. It's not a big deal, right? And it was under warranty. But the only way to access that, to get that, is you have to pull the whole engine out. And then I learned like, okay, that means that for every other little thing there, you have to also pull the engine out, which unless you do that, you have a cherry picker in your garage, that's like a couple $1,000s every time. And I was like, why would they build it like that?
Do you have the answer?
I got that returned as a lemon law.
Oh.
Yeah, because Toyota didn't want to fix it.
Oh. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
bad design. Interesting.
Maybe there was like only 2-3 bolts that they had to remove and they could easily pull it out, but I would guess not because, they would have done that if that were the case.
I mean, even that, right? Like for houses, you kind of design and have to assume how they're going to maintain it. And that's another realm or facet of architectural design.
I love, have you seen this? Sorry, have you seen this thing where they sweep and it goes into this automatic vacuum thing?
Yeah.
Is that good or is that bad?
I mean, there's two ends of it because I would want that actually designed into my casework or my cabinets so you don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like a really minimal, clean look. But then it's like, well, how long does that last? And then if I replace it, are they going to have one the exact same size that fits there? So even a lot of our purchases, like I consider that before buying it because, a lot of products nowadays just don't last that long. So how do you make sure you take care of it, and how do you make sure you place it and still keep it looking good?
When we were speaking earlier about these elements in the Craftsman house, like, do you know what we were talking about?
Yeah, like decorative trim, right? It's on the inner part of the ceiling. And, yeah. And then what was the other?
There's some sort of like paneling that's
wainscoting.
Oh yeah, okay, that's what.
Yeah.
And what's the purpose of that?
So arts and crafts was an era where it was more about the craft and extra decorative parts. So that's on the other side of the spectrum versus doing something strictly for function. So now these don't have as much of a function, but they're these extra decorative piece because people were prideful in the craft and the design and the production of these things. But I mean, some people use wainscoting now too. Also, if they know they're going to be banging up the walls, it protects the wall a little bit better. You get like a nicer hardwood versus a typical drywall, and it'll kind of make the space last a little longer. But I think aesthetically, it also extends the space vertically and just makes it look a little more organized. And so there's like design reasons for that too.
I see. Yeah. Well, Justin, we asked each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
I know it's small and not too mighty, but this is my grandpa's ring. So my grandpa, born and raised in Wisconsin, he didn't get to get an education because he was busy working on the farm. But you could tell from like a very short conversation with him that he was a very intelligent guy. And I feel like a lot of we bonded over our thought process and our perspective of the world. So even though we had very different backgrounds, he was my go-to call on my commute to work every morning. and he just wanted to kind of like understand, and he was very inquisitive about like, wait, why would you design it like that, or what does that product do? Like, explain that to me. So I feel like a lot of the way I am, or the way I think, is definitely stems from that guy, or my grandpa. So that was kind of my significant item.
Is he still around?
No, he passed away when he was 97. So he had like 97 years worth of like really interesting stories. And even though I obviously live over here, he lived in Wisconsin, so we wouldn't see each other physically too much, maybe once, maybe twice a year. But yeah, those phone calls were just like, were really interesting, because the stories he would tell. So that's where Sasada comes from. And a lot of people living in this area would assume that Sasada is Japanese, but it actually used to be Zazada with a Z. And so when they came to America, they made them change it because it was too harsh sounding.
What?
So every time, so even being in the Asian leagues, they're like, oh yeah, Sasada, like he's good. It's like, nah.
That's funny, yeah, because it does sound like a Japanese last name.
Yeah, definitely. It is a last name in Japan. I've seen it many times.
Oh, really?
That, like, if you Google only that name, all these Japanese links will come up. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So it sounds like your grandfather was quite an influential person in your life.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, he did woodworking. He enjoyed doing things with his hands, which is like something I also take pride in, but yeah, I would say like our mental similarities is pretty high. And so we bonded over those things like that.
So I'm sorry. So it was initially Zazada, but is he Filipino?
No,
he's Caucasian.
No. Yeah, this is he's very white. He's from Wisconsin. So my dad's full white. His background or lineage is German and Welsh. And then my mom's from the Philippines.
And they made him change his last name?
Yeah. Well, it was my grandfather's grandfather.
I see.
But even reading, because they have some of their journals around still. So I was reading my grandpa's mom's journal, and where they grew up in Wisconsin, they only taught German. So she had to learn English when she was 15. So it was just a way different world, and it was just crazy to hear some of his stories, and he knows obviously that I'm Asian or half Asian, and he would call Asian people mountain people, and I felt like that was like derogatory. Like I didn't understand it, so I remember asking him like, hey, why do you call them mountain people? He's like, well, we were on the farm, we would get corn, and when we needed medicine, they would come down from the mountain and we'd meet and exchange. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not derogatory. They're actually people from the mountain. Okay, perfect. I got it.
That's funny. Well, Justin, I want to get more into your story, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sometimes, even the best of us can slip up. That's why the law offices of Scott Wormuth are here to pick you back up again.
And while they strive to get you the biggest compensation possible, oh my gosh,
their main concern is your health and recovery. They work closely with doctors and insurance companies to make sure you get the proper medical treatment.
Initial consultations are free, so give them a call.
At the law offices of Scott Wormuth, we're with you all the way.
I'm Scott Wormuth. We've been fighting for your rights for more than 40 years.
All right, we're back with Justin. Justin, when we come back from the break, we like to ask questions from this deck of cards called Icebreakers, and it's just a way for the audience to get to know us a little bit better. So here we go. If you could only keep 3 things from your home, what would you pick and why?
Can they be people or just objects?
Let's go with objects, because the people are sort of given.
I don't have to say my wife and my 2 kids. Okay. Objects. I have a sketchbook that I love. During architecture school, you kind of always keep a sketchbook around you. And since I like to dabble in all types of design, I just always have, a whole sketchbook of just raw sketches, no lettering, nothing, just pure scribbles. I would want to keep that. Then we have a good family picture of us recently, so That would definitely have to be another answer, or else I'm going to get in trouble if I don't bring that. What's my last one?
It's kind of tough too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what's my favorite piece of furniture in my house. I just purchased a lounge chair that I know is going to look really great in my living room. So I'll try to bring that, even though it's going to be like kind of heavy.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Victoria?
I don't know. The first one that came to mind is like my phone, because that has like my music and then all communications and stuff like that.
That's a good answer.
And then like another object, I was thinking I got a sword from Scotland, so that'd be cool to bring with me.
Okay.
I think the third one might be like one of my stuffed animals that I had since I was a kid.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I had the benefit of the time waiting for you guys. So I think I would take easily this box of photos, right, from that are actually printed out, right? Those photos. I would take this other photo of my family, like it's hanging on the wall. It's like us dressed up in like Western gear. Like I have like an oil like trench coat and holding a rifle and stuff. And I think the last thing is just like this folder of birth certificates and important like family tree, family documents. Yeah.
So like paper goods, like
yeah, stuff
like physical memories.
Yeah, I haven't. I went minimalist like maybe 9 years ago. Like really got rid of like a bunch of stuff. Just try to make maintenance like a lot easier. So I don't really have a whole bunch of stuff. I try not to accumulate a lot of stuff. Yeah. That
actually made me think of like I have a huge storage bin of just pure pictures, and those are pictures I don't want to lose. So.
No changing answer.
Because that one object covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you're listening or watching online, let us know what you would bring with you if you had very limited time to get out. So Justin, who comes to seek out your services? Is it someone who's like building a new home, designing an office space? Like what does that look like?
Since my private practice is more of like a side gig and just additional work for me, the perk of that is that I get to carefully select my clients. So, maybe a normal month, I'll get 3 or 4 clients kind of looking for my services. But I try to choose one that sounds fun to me. And that could go anything from a small, intimate bathroom remodel, or it could be a new construction add-on to their house. But also what's tied to that is client selection, right? So if they're giving me some problems and they're just forming the contract, that's kind of my red flag, like this might be a not so fun experience for me. And so that also dictates who I end up working with. But if I had to kind of narrow it down, majority, I do a lot of residential projects, but I also like to, I wouldn't say pro bono, but it's free services in terms of, let me give you all these resources, let me give you a lot of information so that you can learn how to do this on your own and that you don't have to pay me for this. So, during the pandemic, do you know Terasaki Budokan in LA? It's in Little Tokyo. It's a community center, relatively new in terms of construction and being built. But during the pandemic, I felt like people were going to be more stuck at home, and in return, they would want to revive those spaces. So I held free workshops where you just, hey, bring a mask, bring pictures of the space you want to revive. Let's talk about the design. Let's talk about how you could do it yourself so that you could kind of be able to make it through the pandemic in a space that you're enjoying. So I also have moments or opportunities like that where I make sure that's a priority for me too, in terms of who I'm giving my services to.
Sure. Yeah. That's wise, because the best clients are not always like the highest paying or biggest projects, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So on that note, what's the story of like one of your worst clients that you took on? Or did you know ahead of time, like you don't want to take on a bad client?
I'll tell 2 stories.
Okay.
Because one was I was actually still at USC, and I won't name them, but it was a worldwide brand that wanted my services. They're like, hey, you're pretty cool. You know about clothing, you know about architecture. Come and design our offices. And back then I was just so excited. So as soon as we finished the conversation, I started sketching. I started getting all these things together. I gave them a design proposal. I was like, hey, what do you think? And they're kind of like, yeah, we'll see. And a couple of weeks went by. They're like, oh, we're probably not going to do this anymore. All right, cool, man. That would have been a cool opportunity, but cool. I drive by the place that I was supposed to design, and they basically took my design and ran with it. And I was like, oh, no contract, nothing. That's on you, Justin. From now on, I don't care who it is. You strike a contract before you do any work. And so that was a really big learning experience for me. So I have a very tight contract now before I start a majority of my work.
Did you just chalk it up to lesson learned, or did you like approach them and say, hey, what's up with this?
I might have sent them, like, I was younger back then, so I might have sent them a message like, hey, that's really not nice, man. You guys definitely
in those words?
No, a little harsher than that, but they definitely had the money for it. They're a really well-known brand, and I think nowadays that not me, but someone else would have definitely tried to expose them for that. And that just wasn't my thing, and I was busy anyways. I was like, lesson learned. From now on, don't do that.
Okay. Second story?
And then my second story was
But that happened pretty early on, so that was a blessing for you.
Very early on, yeah. So I'm glad I learned that lesson early on. And then the second story was kind of based on my learning lessons, or all the lessons I've learned. It was probably going to be one of my biggest residential projects. It was going to be a very high-paying project, but I didn't like the way the guy was talking to me during just making the contracts. And he would say condescending things like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Just do what you're told. And just little words like that, I'm like, I just can't see myself listening to you for, like, as we go through this, like, kind of tedious process, right? Because not only are you doing design, but we have to, architects have to oversee construction. So it's like, I don't want to talk to you for 2 years. No, I'm okay. He's like, are you sure? I could pay you cash right now. I was like, not worth it to me. Thank you. So I think learning that money isn't always the priority is another lesson learned for me, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it sounds like quite the jerk.
Yeah. It was not. And I even told, so he was actually representing the client. So when I finally talked to the actual client, he was saying like, oh, that's how he is. Don't worry about him. It's like, well, if I had to talk to him, I am worried about him. Mm-hmm. He's like, those are my red flags. I was like, if we do this project, I don't want to talk to him. I only want to talk to you. And he's like, well, he represents me. It's like, well, I'm sorry. It doesn't sound like a good fit. No harm, no foul. Go ahead.
And what about a project or a client that you had an amazing time with?
Oh man, my favorite client, obviously I'm biased, is myself. Like every time
yourself,
every time I do, or I would say, my wife, because she's kind of like the client too. But like, our bathroom remodel, it was just fun doing that stuff and showing my wife, like, look what our bathroom's gonna, because our current home used to be a elderly facility. So the bathroom had a roll-in shower, had a separate stand-up shower.
What's a roll-in shower? Like there's a door that opens up to go in?
It was actually nothing. It was flush. Everything was flush so that you could roll in and be able to kind of rinse them, the user down. But it was just extremely outdated, not good-looking tile. And I have I'm very particular with color and texture and finishes, and it hurt my heart every time to go in that bathroom. And I remember just developing the design with my wife and having these conversations, and I felt like it was fun. Maybe I'm pretty sure my wife was like, dude, that's too much. I'm tired of talking about this. But to me, I was having a blast. the bathroom came out great, and now, because we have 3 bathrooms total, now that's the most favorite bathroom. So everyone only uses that bathroom. But that was just a testament of how well the project came out. So I'm excited. Like, our next big project is going to be our kitchen. And we have a relatively large kitchen. So as tedious and as annoying I'm going to be during that phase, I know I'm going to enjoy doing that with my wife.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Do you look at our space here and you're like, oh, this is, do you cringe at this?
No, this is not that bad because it's extremely functional, right? With like all the equipment, like it makes sense how you just like you make a specific portion proper for the filming. But I definitely get asked that question when I go to other people's houses. And my response is like, oh, it's okay. Like, I don't like, it makes me feel bad. Like, cause then I'll start pointing things out and they go, oh my God, you're right. And I'll shatter the glass and then I could see them like annoyed by that.
Oh no.
After I point it out. So I've learned just like, oh, it's just the way I am. Don't worry about it. Like, but yeah, when I go to other people's houses, I see a lot of little things. I'm like, ugh.
Are they functional? Like functional things you're pointing out? Are they like materials? Are you?
I have a thing for when people use what they think is trendy, but it's actually outdated. And it's like, oh, you think that's trendy now, but that's actually from 4 years ago. So now your 1-year-old, kitchen looks 5 years old to me. And maybe to another person, they're like, oh, that looks perfectly fine. That looks like what a kitchen looks like. But I'll just pick out little like design details. I'm like, no one does it like that anymore. Or products don't even make it like that because they've realized it's not helpful or it's not efficient for it to be like that. So there's a lot of things that I noticed that my wife was like, didn't see it, didn't notice, don't care. Yeah.
Does that mean that you lean more towards like modern architecture or modern look? Like what is this? What would you describe your style? I
lean towards minimalism for sure, but I like a little bit of character and funk, and I like
funk. Yeah. What's funk in architecture?
I like things that have like original character. Like, so my 1950s ranch house has these random pieces of stained glass inside the house. And when I started to kind of clean up the interior spaces, people were like, why don't you get rid of those and just plaster it? And, it's like, why not? Like look how the light comes through this sometimes. Oh, look how pretty that is. Like, you don't like, I wouldn't even know where to find that nowadays. So there's no way I'm getting rid of it. And so you see this clean, modern, minimalist design aesthetic, but then you'll see the pop of character and the pop of color with that. And that's what I kind of look for. So even in our dining room, we used to have wooden rafters. They had wooden paneling with red wood floors, and it just looked like a hideous cabin just from the dining room. But, we cleaned it up with nice wooden floors. We smooth white finish walls. We still have the wooden rafters. But then we have like these little trinkets and moments where we're just like add a little bit of flair and character, and then it's done. And so, especially with kids, I try to minimize how many things they can break too. So that's also a part of why we're more minimalist than usual.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know that. Well, I just want to share with you like the house that we would love to build, my wife and I actually, this is some elements that we've talked about, but we imagine like a courtyard inside, like open air, like sort of like those Japanese like movies, right?
Love that.
With a walkway that goes around, an outdoor kitchen that's sort of like tied to the home where we would cook. And have you ever seen these like huge fireplaces, like almost like you could walk in? Yeah, and they have like these huge like chains to like cook, right? Like, because we would cook in there,
right?
Yeah, and I seen recently this corner like glass. So a corner of the house has all glass, and so at night and during like different seasons, you can just sit in there and see. Like that would be like so amazing. And I've only seen that in a magazine. I've never seen that in real life.
House. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's just sort of all those elements, I think mostly just to be connected to the outside, not feel like we're in a box.
Architecture talk, or like the way to phrase it for that is blurring the line between interior and exterior, and I like doing that too. I have a lot of sets of glass doors. They're kind of like French doors with like these extra side lights, but there's so much connection. Like wherever you are in our house, you could always see outside, and our street side of our house faces north, which you don't get any direct light, but you get just natural light. And they used to have shutters on all of them. Like we technically don't need shutters on any of these. Like I'm not too worried about people walking by and seeing into a small part of my kitchen. That's fine with me. But now it's just so open, and you could always see the exterior. I just feel like that feels a little bit more, I don't know, just feels better being connected to nature like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Justin, we're going to move on to the final segment of the show where we get to learn what you like about the San Gabriel Valley. Justin, this is what we call the SGV3. This is where we get to learn what you like and what are your 3 favorite or most memorable places or experiences in the San Gabriel Valley.
I would say number 1 would have to be Elder Gym, which is in Monterey Park. It's part of Macy Middle School. Elder Gym was a place where we played a lot of Tigers, but we also played a lot of Monterey Park Sports Club. But they also had an open gym often, and that was a place that we went almost I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. So when we didn't have these actual basketball games or practices, you could find us enjoying, for me, I was playing against older locals who are also very good. And that was just always a staple. And plus, I went to Macy Middle School, so I just have so many memories. And I spent maybe 40% of my week in that gym.
Oh, wow.
During these specific years. So Elder Gym is one.
I have a lot of memories there too.
Right?
Yeah. Like, I think they had bars on, like, it's all cinder block, right? And then they had bars there, like pull-up bars, but you could dunk on it, like when I was younger.
That was the thing to do, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, like, eating, after game snacks on that little thing outside the doors.
The little plaza, or whatever it is. Yeah.
And it always had this, like, really bad lighting in there.
They fixed that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was very yellow, right?
Yeah.
Like, you look at your skin, you're like...
And there's a certain smell in that gym. Like, it wasn't bad, but it just had a certain smell.
Yeah, I feel like it smells a little bit of, like, locker space. But, I don't know. But wood. Like, a lot of wood.
Yeah. That was a great gym. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So number 1, Elder Gym. Number 2, ELAC, just because that was a place where I pivoted from basketball to architecture. That was a place that kind of gave me the space to grow and develop and transfer to USC. And then it was down the street, and coincidentally, the first time I picked up my wife for our first date, I had no idea, but she lived right on the other side of ELAC.
Oh.
And I remember, this is back when it was like MapQuest. I was like, 0.75 miles? Oh, this is going to be a cheap date. I don't even have to drive that far. And that actually brings me to my number 3, which is the original Alondras in Montebello.
Okay.
Do you ever have Alondras?
When only on Main Street in Alhambra.
Okay, perfect, yeah. But that's where I went for our first date. That's where we would go almost every week. They have a sauce called Arlene sauce. It's kind of like a combination of lemon, pepper, and buffalo. And that was my thing for a very long time. But yeah, those are my 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have a story about Alondras. I was in there with my friend Aaron, who passed away in 2020, and I was coaching basketball at the time. And one of my players came in. He's a freshman. He's like, "Hey, coach, what's up?" Say hi. He's like, "What are you eating?" I was like, "Oh, He's like, "Oh, that's not hot." He's just coming, like, talking trash. And we had some, sauce there, and I was like, "Hey, we'll give you $5 to eat this." And he just takes it and he downs it, right? He takes our cash. And then we're like, oh, we'll give you $10 to eat the atomic sauce or whatever it is, right? You have to sign a waiver, right?
Yeah, I signed it. Yeah.
And then my friend was like, I'll give you $10 too. And then so they call over the waitress and she's like, are you sure you want to do this? And then so they bring the sauce, he signs the waiver, and then before he does it, we're like, come on, you don't have to do this, right? And he's like, no, I want to do it. So he shoots the whole thing down.
Oh man.
And then he chases it with like a thing of ranch. He grabs the money and he like confidently goes like outside. Like his mom's outside, right? And we're just looking at him. He's looking at us like all confident, you know? He goes back to the table. He knows we're watching him too, right? And then it's like, we see his whole water go down and then he goes like to the bathroom. I think the next time I saw him, he's like, Coach, he's like, I had to spend like half my money buying Pepto-Bismol. My mom, I had to tell my mom to go take me to the store.
So I have a similar story because after every semester for design studio, I would take my students out for dinner. And we would just kind of, I don't know, like, so USC actually had that thing too where they would give the instructors money to take out the studio to hang out outside of school. And so I liked doing that with my students. So we would go to Landras all the time, the one on Main Street. And one of my students the whole semester was telling me like, I can handle spicy stuff. I was like, all right, we'll see when we go to Landras. And yeah, you're going to have the atomic one. And he had 3 atomic wings. He's like, oh, it's pretty spicy, but not that bad. I've never seen a student sweat behind his ears. Like the randomest places, they were just sweat. And he was wearing a flannel.
Oh, no.
I was like, you wore the wrong thing to be like eating atomic wings today. And it just looked like he didn't have a good time like the whole night just because of that.
Yeah.
But the next semester, he was like, oh, see, I had it. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't think you were going to survive that night, man. Like you're pretty done.
Yeah. Wow. That was funny.
But sorry, side note, but you know what the best thing is for when you have spicy food?
What's that?
What do you try to do to calm down the spice? This is a good question too.
Milk, ice cream, frozen yogurt.
Very hot water.
Very hot water.
You rinse out your mouth with very hot water, gone.
Dude, I want to try that.
Dude, it is a life. And people always think I'm trying to like torture them and make it worse. I'm like, trust me, just like, put it wherever it burns, just put the really hot water and it'll be gone.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I said this on a previous show. We had Camp Scoville on here. They do like hot pepper, like seasoning. It's really good stuff. But I told him, I was like, I thought because it's an oil, the capsaicin oil, I thought that I could wash it off with soap. So I wanted to experiment with it, right? He started laughing. How it didn't work? Well, it didn't work. It was pretty bad. But that was my thinking, right? I was like, oh, if I can find something that can just get rid of it, then,
we're good.
Yeah, that didn't work though.
Hot water.
Hot water, are you sure?
Yeah. Try it.
Okay, I'm going to try it. I'll try it.
Yeah, I tried that, like having hot tea after
does that help?
Something spicy. It does help. It doesn't like do it immediately. And depending on the tea, like peppermint doesn't help, but some other teas. Yeah.
It's like hot water, rinse it around like it's mouthwash.
Yeah, you need to do it a couple times.
As hot as you can get?
As hot as you can handle, yeah.
Okay. I can handle pretty hot.
Yeah, me too.
Wow, okay. Okay, I'm going to try it. I'm definitely going to try it. I'll let you know. Well, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your stories with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You could check out my website, Sasada Architecture, so SASADA architecture.com. If it's via Instagram, sader.architect, that's SADER.architect. And then if you're trying to check out that cabin in Big Bear, that's whiskey, WHISKEY .point.cabin. So whiskey point cabin.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for that was fun, man.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun.
Well, there you go. Another episode in the books for you. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I surely did. I'm pretty sure Justin is the first architect that we've had on the show. And it was an interesting journey into the mind of someone who's passionate about architecture and what their journey looks like. So thank you for sharing that with us and our audience.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Well, if you enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing. You can find our full back catalog of episodes on our website, mysgv.net. And if you want to support the show in a more meaningful way, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon, MySGV Podcast. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us on the MySGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Scott Wormuth, directed by Russell Mano, edited by Victoria Allers, and original music by Yone OG. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.